So sig figs are kind of a weird concept. Basically, it came out of scientists realizing that if you put water in a graduated cylinder and it came up to, say, 5 milliliters, okay, they didn't know, when they recorded that value, they didn't know if it was exactly 5 milliliters or if it was, 5.5 milliliters. So there's always a number that has to be estimated. Okay, so there's always like a decimal point or some place in a recorded number that has to be estimated. So this is where significant figures came in. Significant figures are the numbers in a measurement that are reported with confidence. So the scientist who records that number knows that those numbers are accurate. And then they estimate the final number. Okay? So if your graduated cylinder, say, has markings every milliliter, you would have to go to the tenths place. Okay, so you have to have that exact measurement, okay, so the 5 milliliters, and then you have to go one place past that. If, say, your graduated cylinder only recorded every 10 milliliters, okay, then you would have to estimate the first digit in that number. Okay, so say you had 12 milliliters, okay, so you know that you have 10 milliliters for certain, okay, because it's past that 10 mark. But then you have to estimate where the water line is between the 10 and the 20 mark. Okay, so that 2 is not exact, it is an estimated number, but it's basically a best guess number. Okay, so when you're recording these values, you have to make sure that there's only one number in your entire recorded number that is estimated. Okay? So you can have things that are called exact numbers. So exact numbers don't really factor into the significant figures thing. They are known to be exactly that number. So this is basically like counting numbers. If you were to count the number of students in the class, that would be 1. If you were counting, maybe marbles or something, or fruit flies, because yes, I've done that and it's annoying. Things like that. It's basically you're counting those numbers, you know them to be exact. And then unit conversion factors, which we talked about in the last video, are also considered to be exact numbers. So that will come into importance whenever we talk about calculations with significant figures, because of course we have to do calculations with sig figs. So this is where we get into those calculations. Or no, not yet. Okay. Rules for determining the number of sig figs in any number that you have. Okay. All non-zero digits, all non-zero numbers are significant. Okay, so the part that gets a little tricky is when you start tossing in those zeros. Okay, so zeros that are found between non-zero digits are significant. So if you have, say, 2, 0, 1, okay, all 3 of those numbers are significant. So in that number, you would have 3 sig figs. Okay. But on the other hand, if you had, say, well, we'll get into that. Okay, so leading zeros, which are to the left of the first non-zero number. Okay, so this is when you have a decimal point. So you have a number that is less than 1. So you have, say, 0.00253. Okay, so those leading zeros that are between the first non-zero number and the decimal point are not significant. Okay? So, yeah, I'll show you some more stuff about this in class because it's a little bit easier to talk about in person. Trailing zeros. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit different. This is again when you have a decimal point. Okay, so you start counting when you hit that first non-zero number that comes after the decimal point. So again, this is a number less than 0. Okay, so say we had that 0.00253, but then there's 2 zeros after the 3. Okay, now you still count those trailing zeros because they are after the first non-zero number. All right. So basically, if you have a decimal point, you are going to start at, well, let's see if this will actually show up. Okay, so if you have a decimal point, okay, you are going to start on this side of the number, okay, and then go to where you see the first non-zero number, and then you're going to count everything after that. Okay, so this would have 5 significant figures. On the other hand, if you have a number greater than 1, there we go, just toss this in here, okay, but it does not have a decimal point, you're going to start on this side and count when you hit the first non-zero number, which in this case is the 3. Okay, so this number would have 3 significant figures. I don't know why this keeps, there we go. Okay, all right, I know it's a little bit weird, but if you see this decimal point, start on the left side of the number and then start counting when you hit the first non-zero number. If you do not have a decimal point, start on the right side and then start counting when you hit the first non-zero number. Okay? Where this gets even trickier is if, well, in this case here, okay, where we have the 25300, we don't have a decimal point, so we started on the right side of the number and start counting going left. All right? Well, this number doesn't actually indicate if these 2 zeros are significant or not. They are assumed not to be because there is no indication, okay? But there are a couple different ways you can actually indicate that these 2 zeros, or even just this 1 zero here, are significant, okay? This is where you can either, let's see, write it down here again, okay? So if this 0 is significant, you can actually draw a line over it, okay? That says that this number has 4 significant figures, not counting this one, okay? So this one is not significant, but the first 4, these 4 here are, because this 0 is significant. Now, if both zeros were significant, okay, do it this way. Okay, so if both zeros are significant, you can either draw a line over this second 0 or just put a decimal point. Okay? Because again, if you have a decimal point, you're going to start counting from the left side of this number, which means that you count starting at the first non-zero number. Well, that's the first number. So 253, and then both of these zeros are significant. So this would be 5 sig figs. Now, the third way that you can indicate if one of these zeros is significant is to go ahead and write in scientific notation. Scientific notation is really nice because it cuts out the unnecessary zeros. Okay? So if the first 0 is significant, but the second one isn't, we would write it like that. And then again, you have to write your exponent, so it would be times 10, and we moved the decimal point 4 places. Okay? Like that. So in this case, again, we have 4 sig figs because they're all written here. And with scientific notation, again, you only write the numbers that are significant. All right, so we've got some examples here, so I want you to try to do these as we're going along. So how many significant figures are in this number? So all of them are non-zero numbers, so all three are significant. So it has 3 sig figs. What about this? All right, so you have no decimal point, which means you're going to start on the right side and start counting whenever you hit the first non-zero number. So you hit 2, and that's when you're going to start counting. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 sig figs. What about this one? So you're going to start counting on this side. And you only start counting when you hit the first non-zero number. So none of these zeros are significant. Just the 4 and the 7 are. So you got 2 sig figs. What about this one? So with this one, again, you have a decimal point. So you're going to start counting from this side. Right? And these 2 zeros are not significant, okay, because they come before the first non-zero number. So you start counting at the 4. 4, 1, 5. What about these? Are these significant? They are, okay, because they come after the first non-zero number, right? Again, you start counting from the left side of this number. Start counting when you hit the first non-zero number, and then count everything after it. So this one has 5 sig figs. What about these two? So the 190, this first one, you don't really know if that 0 is significant or not. You don't know if the scientists thought that this reading hit at exactly 190, or if there was some estimation going on here. Okay, so you don't know if that 0 is significant or not. Okay, so it either has 2 or 3 sig figs, and it's kind of unknown at this point. Sorry, my dog is dreaming and he's wagging his tail, and it's really cute. But so with this second one here, okay, because they tossed in that decimal point, now instead of starting to count from this side like we did with the 190 up here, now we start counting from this side. No, other way. Sorry. Whoa. Hold up here. There we go. Okay. Alright, so that's not what I wanted. There we go. This one we started counting from this side. Okay, so that's why we didn't know if we were supposed to count that 0 or not. Now in this one, because we have the decimal point, we are going to start on this side of the number. So you count the 1, the 9, and the 0, because it comes after the first non-zero number. So that one has 3 sig figs. Alright, so part 3 is going to have the calculations with sig figs.